It's time for another edition of Dome and Domer.
Hello again, Irish fans. Welcome back to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame sports podcast on the planet. I'm Mike Sullivan, Notre Dame class of 1990, and joining me today, of course, Mike Brammer, class of 1990 classmate as well, Eddie Jordanek, class 89, and Mike Coffey from ND Nation, class of 1991. Today, we're going to recap some of the highlights from Coach Freeman's press conference as we continue to move towards the big showdown in Miami with the 10th ranked Hurricanes. So let's get into it right now. Coach took questions from the media about the depth chart and the roster and personnel. And so one of the major topics and storylines, of course, for the year is something we didn't spend much time talking about in Sunday's show, and that's the quarterback battle. And the starting quarterback, of course, is going to be C.J. Carr. And so I'm going to throw it over to Mike Coffey from ND Nation. Let's start with you and just talk to us a little bit about the general fan reaction to the quarterback battle and how it was resolved, and your thoughts on C.J. Carr leading the Irish.
Well, I think obviously this was a very widely publicized battle going back to the spring and coming in through the fall. And I know a lot of Irish fans on our side especially were hoping to have a more concrete resolution. Not to say that, obviously Freeman said it's Carr, that's what he's going with. But I think a combination of limited access to practices and kind of mixed reactions to the parts that people did see kind of prevented fans from really glomming onto one candidate to say, oh, this guy's definitely outperforming, like Carr is definitely outperforming Minchie, or Minchie's definitely outperforming Carr. Now that very well may have been happening throughout the many practice sessions that no one had access to. But I think part of what came out was that made people uneasy was some people go, oh, it's definitely going to be Carr. Oh, it's definitely going to be Minchie, back and forth. I think if you look back through how each quarterback was reviewed, how each quarterback was looked at, both through the recruiting up till now, I think you're looking at a guy like C.J. Carr, who I think has a higher ceiling definitely than Kevin Minchie. Kevin Minchie's an incredible athlete, but he's also kind of volatile. I think he has a lot of energy in his game. He really wants to make things happen. I think that enthusiasm sometimes can lead to issues. I think Carr's approach is a little bit more methodical. I think from a vertical passing game perspective, he probably is a little bit stronger, or at least, as I said, has the higher ceiling. So I can definitely see why Freeman made this decision, especially when you have Mike Denbrock as the offensive coordinator, who's going to want to move the ball vertically, or at least have the threat to as much as possible. And I can try to remember which side it was, like it was Yahoo or ESPN was saying, you look at it last year, Riley Leonard, not a real deep ball threat. I mean, he had an arm, but they weren't looking at him to throw 30, 40-yard passes. You put a guy like C.J. Carr in here in this offense, and if he can make those 30, 40-yard passes, which I think he has more of a propensity to do than Kenny Minchie does, that makes Notre Dame a hell of a lot more powerful.
Eddie Jordanek, it was clear from the press conference that Freeman loves both these guys, and that it was a very tight battle. He talked about what great attitude Kenny Minchie continues to display, and you're getting everything you want from him after the decision was made, right? And how smart C.J. Carr is, and his ability to see the game, slowly and make good decisions. What's your take on the whole preseason battle and ultimately the decision to go with C.J. Carr?
Well, I didn't know there was going to be homework. I didn't watch the press conference. I spent most of my lunch hour on Taylor Swift's Instagram account. So,
that's why I'm telling you what he said, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. No, I did see some of it. I mean, I think this is all Mike Coffey sounds like he's watched both of them play, a season full of games. I mean, we're not going to know anything at all until we see C.J. Carr play a few series. We don't know Kenny Minchie from Cliff Brown. For all you old fans, he was a quarterback, an African American quarterback. I think the first at Notre Dame in the early '70s. He was, I think, Tom Clement's backup. But anyways, so I I don't really have a clue whether CJ Carr throws a good deep ball under pressure in the Orange Bowl. I don't have a clue if Kenny Minchey is really that great of an athlete. I mean, we just haven't seen these guys play. So, it's kind of like, you trust the coaches, you trust Freeman, you trust Denbrock, you trust Gino, or I can't ever say his last name.
Julia, I think.
Yeah, Julia Gulia. So, I think to me, the stuff that Freeman says and said today that's important is that CJ Carr is a competitor. If you listen closely, he did sort of let it slip that sometimes Carr forces the ball down the field, that he likes to throw the bomb, and he sometimes has a little too much confidence in his ability. I think he made that remark, or he made some reference to overconfidence. So I think it's sort of interesting that they are going with the higher ceiling, it seems to me, in the passing game than with the higher floor. To me, Minchey, from what we've read and heard, would have been a little bit of a safer pick in terms of protecting the football and avoiding turnovers. Again, speculation. But so anyways, I think they'd be fine with either guy. I really don't think I would not be surprised if CJ Carr outplays Carson Beck, right? Like, this kind of stuff is always amusing because you actually get on the game day and all the narratives go out the window, and the results are very different than what the pregame storylines were. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just looking forward to seeing the kid play, because he's been hyped. He's been the most hyped recruit quarterback that Notre Dame's had in quite some time, and we've really never seen him. Do a whole drive or run just more than a handful of handoffs. So let's see what he's got.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ed. It's the coaches are there every day. I don't, the media gets a little glimpse. They don't know. They speculate. And if they go with Carr, if they would have gone with Minchey, I'm good either way, because they're the ones looking them in the eye and seeing how they handle situations and have a whole body of work that, of course, none of the media really get to see. Bram, I thought it was interesting that there was almost like this angst, like people felt they were entitled to know who it was going to be and by a certain date. The reality is, I think Ohio State named their starter the day before we named CJ Carr. So what's your take on the whole battle?
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, at the end of the day, the good thing is we're in a unique situation that we haven't been in a long time. And when's the last time it was that close of a battle between two highly capable quarterbacks in the Notre Dame program? So it's a good situation to be in. I kind of think we're going to see both these guys, even though I think Carr is a starter. I mean, look at what are the chances that Carr lasts 16 games if we get all the way to the championship? If we just get to the playoffs, what are the chances he's going to last all that time? I don't see it. So, Kenny's going to get his shot. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman's the kind of guy that's going to do what's right for the program. He's going to put who he thinks is going to give him the best chance of winning the football game, because that's what head coaches do. So, I think it was maybe a good thing for Carr at the end of the day. I mean, it's a good thing to compete, right? I mean, it's a good thing to force yourself to earn the job outright. And sometimes that brings the best out of people. So maybe the coaches intentionally dragged this out a little bit just because they wanted him to have that experience of winning this out. So I like it. I think we're in a good spot. I'm excited. I wouldn't even be surprised if all of a sudden our first drive, we get down to the 10-yard line and in comes Kenny Minchey. I mean, they might have some packages drawn up for him that they think are unstoppable. Who knows? I don't know. I'm just not going to be surprised by that, because I think there's that much confidence in both these guys.
Yeah, I agree with your point. Like, this is clearly the deepest quarterback situation, that we've had in quite some time. And knock on wood, you just hope everybody stays healthy, in the sense that you're right. Minchey's there'll be plays where the starter's dinged and the number two's got to come in. Steve Angeli, I just saw an interview with him as the Syracuse starter, and they referenced what he did in the Orange Bowl last year and how pivotal that was, right? So, Minchey's going to be ready. He's going to have opportunity. I feel you're right about that. And Freeman did talk about like putting these guys in pressure situations to see how they react. And the competition itself, I think, may have created pressure situations for them to react to. So either way, I think we're in a great spot, and there's going to be growing pains, but that's all right, because let's talk about the rest of the roster. It is so strong, I think it can carry an inexperienced quarterback for parts of the season. So another position group that Coach talked about, some individuals here, and that was something that came up the other day in our conversation, the tight end situation. And, you know, there was a guy brought up that I think might be a little bit of an X factor for us, and that's Ty Washington, the transfer from Arkansas. So, Bram, I know you were concerned about Bauman's injury in the tight end situation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to need him, right? I mean, if that's truly the case, I mean, thank God, and what a key critical role he might end up playing prior to us even transferring him in. It's the only area on the roster that, for me, is personally a real concern. No Cooper Flanagan, no Kevin Bauman. Even though the walk-on is hurt, he's out now. So we are thin at tight end, and that's for sure. Now, a lot has been said about Eli Reardon. I've always had a high ceiling for him. I just think his frame is awesome. I think he's just never really kind of clicked just yet. But I'm hearing bits and pieces that he's been doing it in camp. So I'm really looking for him to have a breakout season. I just think it's a long season. It's going to be hard. And boy, you know, another injury at tight end is something we can't afford at this moment.
So, Denbrock did talk about Reardon and how he thinks he's the next great Notre Dame tight end. And, you know, that bar is very high, obviously. Another guy that Coach Freeman mentioned today was Jack Larson, who is a redshirt freshman, that they're very high on him, right? And so, you hope you stay healthy. You hope everybody, plays up to their potential. But it'll be interesting to see what Ty Washington brings as a guy that didn't have a lot of success, but Denbrock recruited at Arkansas, but Denbrock recruited him, and Denbrock's very high on him. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Okay, Eddie, Mike Coffey, let's talk about another area, position group that is loaded, and of course, that's the running backs. Let's talk about Jeremiah Love for a minute. What do you think about Love relative to the Heisman? The guys, might be one of the top few picks in the draft next year. What about the Heisman? Is he a bona fide, legitimate Heisman contender, knowing that he's not going to get maybe as many touches as some other Heisman candidates might get? So, Mike Coffey, why don't you take that one?
Well, it certainly is an embarrassment of riches in the running back roster. I mean, I'm glad that Jeremiah Love is getting the hype for the Heisman that he's getting. I mean, God knows he deserves it. He's an incredibly talented kid. Certainly, as most Notre Dame players are, great kid. I mean, certainly someone proud to be a fellow alum someday. But I think what's going to hurt him, as you noted, is just the depth. I mean, the thing that might help get Notre Dame to the championship game is something that's going to hurt Jeremiah Love in his Heisman race, because Heisman Trophy winners are usually the guys who you look at a team and you say, if that guy's gone, this team will not do anything. If, God forbid, something happened with Jeremiah Love and he wasn't able, kind of like the way Ben Morrison last year when he missed a number of games, Janarian Price is going to jump in and hopefully, I mean, the production will drop, no doubt, but I think that when Heisman voters are looking at that, they're going to say, well, yeah, Jeremiah Love's going to really need not only is he going to need explosive stats, which obviously he needs, he's going to need the Notre Dame PR machine behind him, because I think the whole Highway 33 thing from the last couple of years ago was done kind of like too little, too late. I mean, I hope Notre Dame is on top of this from the get-go, giving Love the support he needs to get those Heisman votes, because these days it's a popularity contest just as much as anything else.
Yeah, Jordanek, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, kind of shameless plug for Pete Sampson, but his profile of Jeremiah Love in The Athletic today is really one of the best, most nuanced profile of a college athlete that I've read in a long time. I mean, this is an interesting guy. And I think that the key takeaway was that he is comfortable with sharing the load. And he wasn't always that way by a long shot. And so you got to have that. I thought the other key takeaway is that with both he and Price, it's pretty clear to me that they still regret how they utilized Jeremiah Love in the championship game in terms of the very small amount of touches that he had, and that they are going to commit to involving him and Price in the passing game more. So, like I agree with what everybody said. These are two great backs. I think they're probably both All-Americans if they're the only guys on their respective teams. If they're kind of like the bell cows of year past, they're not Le'Veon Bell. They're not these guys that are going to get 25 to 30 rushes a game. But if they were, I think they'd both be in the top 5 in the Heisman balloting. They're both that good. Now, maybe the Heisman balloting of 20, 25 years ago, it's kind of become a quarterback award with a few exceptions in the last 20 years. I think I saw that like since 2000, only Reggie Bush and who were the other two? There's only been 3 running backs that have won the award like in the last 20, 25 years.
Kid from Alabama,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard
Derrick
at that.
Henry, right? Derrick Henry.
Right.
And, yeah. So
it is hard at that position. Love, I think this is right. Love averaged 12 touches a game last year, receiving and rushing. And so, you got to stay healthy. It's for the best interest of the team. And that bit about him being so unselfish, again, that came up in the press conference as well. So, I wouldn't expect him to win the Heisman. I think he certainly is probably the best running back in the country, but Jadarian Price is very close as well. So we're in a great position. Now, they did talk a few weeks ago about using both those guys in the return game. So why don't we segue over to special teams now for a moment and talk about the role, that special teams has played in last year's success and, what we're looking for again this year. So Bram, let's talk a little bit about your thoughts on special teams. Marty Biaggi, obviously a great coach. We use our personnel creatively, but it also comes down to the guys kicking the ball as well. So what do you think about our chances to make an impact with special teams?
Yeah, well, kind of alluding to what Ed was saying, just in terms of what little we hear coming out of camp, there has been a little bit of concern with maybe a lack of total consistency with field goal kicking. So there have been some reported, we used to do when I was there in '86 as a walk-on. Holtz was notorious for this. He would just all of a sudden grab practice and put John Carney out there and say, "This is for the win, 40-yarder. Everybody line up." Carney gets back, and then Carney he would drill it. But in the same situation that has leaked a little bit is that we have not been that consistent with that kind of setup. So it's an entity that's unknown right now with this kicker. I'm a little concerned about that, but we'll see in the game. Because look, at the end of the day, having an automatic field goal kicker inside of 40 yards, that's golden in college football. So that could be a little bit of a concern for us this year. Just to comment on the Price and Love thing, I think we're going to see that early. I think we'll see it at Miami. I think we might see it at A&M. I don't think that's going to stay the course the whole season. I don't think that's going to make a lot of sense to have both those guys back there as much, reliance we're going to have on them in the running game. It's going to be pretty hard to keep them back there. I think you're going to see other guys step in. They're going to be a part of that. But special teams, I think we're in a great spot for that in terms of us as a team. We're always delivering with special teams. I expect that to be the case this year. It may just be the meat and potatoes that might be a little bit scary for us, and we'll find out after the first 5 field goal attempts.
I would say that we always get excited about the tricky stuff, That kind of stuff on special teams is always enjoyable, and there have been some creative things. But to me, special teams is fundamentals. It's, not giving up kickoff returns for touchdowns, not giving up punt returns for touchdowns, converting every extra point.
But to your point, Ed, Buckner is the holder this year, so expect something there.
Yeah. No, I mean, all that stuff is great. I enjoy it as much as anybody else, but I do want, like you said, I want, I think the floor for any kicker, professional or college, at a top sort of contending school has to be 75%. It just has to be. If not 80.
From anywhere. And they're higher than that inside of 40. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about an overall percentage.
Yep.
But, inside 40, I think it should be, you miss 1 out of 10. I'm not a fan of putting Love and Price back to do returns. I think it's a pretty violent play in college football. They haven't changed the rules like the way the pros have. I'd rather not risk injury. When you look up and down the roster, I mean, they got a lot of guys who can fly, a lot of guys who can catch, a lot of guys who can, probably make a difference in the return game. Some of these freshmen, and, I understand, ball security is important or something, but I would rather not see either of them in the return game. That's just a personal preference, because I don't think it's necessary to be a championship caliber team. I think you get another guy or two on the field that otherwise wouldn't get on the field, and you sort of you prevent sort of two of your really high leverage guys from a potential injury. So that's my 2 cents.
But I would also say the one thing about special teams that makes me happy is it wasn't too long ago that we were all hearing reports coming out of, it's not important to spend a lot of time on special teams. Special teams is we're just going to fair catch it all the time. And now there's actual work being put in. There's special team plays that have affected Notre Dame wins in the last season or two. So I like the fact that we got Marty Biaggi out there and really putting some thought into it and forcing opponents to really spend time on counteracting what Notre Dame can do on special teams.
Yeah, I love where we're at with all of it. I think for me, the wrinkles, whatever, it does make the opponent have to spend time preparing. But for me, the competition, the roster's so deep. Guys are going to have to really bring it to even make a special team, right? Because there's so much talent everywhere. And so I just love how that creates a culture of competition and excellence, because it's just not, it is such a point of emphasis, and there's so much talent on the roster. So, okay, a few other odds and ends from the press conference. Jordan Botelho is healthy and will play on Sunday night, giving us really cool.
Whether or not he plays, that's. But it's amazing he's available. Yeah,
that's great. Freeman said he's going to play. I'll go with what Coach said. That gives us, really 4 deep at edge rusher. I think that's great. Right guard, still a competition, an open competition. Said both guys are likely to play. They haven't named a starter yet. So I think that's interesting. And then he talked about how impressed he's been with the defensive line and the depth there. And so those were a few other observations on the roster here. Let's pivot a little bit and just talk about college football more generally as we head into week 1. And, if you think about where the national champion is going to come from, everybody's talking about Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, right? You get that. I kind of feel like Notre Dame, Penn State might be just outside that top group. You know who I'm not getting? What's the love for Clemson here? I'm just not sold on that. Any perspective on sort of that group of the top 6 that is likely going to produce the national champion?
Well, I think part of it is there aren't really any dominant coaches right now. I mean, Nick Saban retired, and there isn't a team you could look out there saying this guy is as close to a can't miss coach as you can. He's going to be head and shoulders.
What do you call Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney? How are those not can't miss? I mean, those guys are.
Well, Dabo not recently, but Kirby, I would agree with you there.
Come on.
Yeah. But yeah.
You don't.
But I agree.
They're in a whole different. They're in a whole different level.
Totally.
James Franklin or Marcus Freeman or.
Yeah.
the guy.
And I think that's probably like Clemson.
I just don't think the gap is as wide as it was in past years. I mean,
Yeah.
No, there was
I
a
think
bigger gap than the gap between Saban and everybody else.
well, Smart
the gap of all gaps.
showed last year that he can have an off year, and I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced by Dabo Sweeney. I mean, you can talk about we've created the culture. We don't need transfers and all that. Kate Klubnik might set the world on fire this season, but I just don't see it. I mean, he's a decently talented quarterback, but it seems like the last couple seasons, there's always been he's been put to the test and he hasn't met the situation. So I don't know why this year's going to be different.
Well, I mean, history tells us that when you have an experienced quarterback, so that means Penn State and Clemson, you have a head up on, Ohio State, Georgia, Notre Dame, because they don't. That's just sort of a fact of it doesn't always work out that way, but it's usually an advantage. I mean, Danny Cannell picked Penn State to win it all today on the radio when I was listening to him.
He's not the only one.
I mean,
There's
Clemson
others.
probably has maybe 5, possibly 6 first, second round draft picks on their defense. And can they put it together? They've got, Tom Allen, the guy that was the head coach at IU, is their DC now. But I mean, I agree. I think it's pretty wide open. I mean, I think Ohio State is probably the most talented team, but they have the same situation. They probably have the player of the year in Jeremiah Smith, but they have, do they have somebody to get him the ball? Do they have somebody to throw in the ball? Right. So I think the only thing that is a little bit, that I'm a little bit ambivalent about is in prior years, Texas, Ohio State, and Clemson, LSU, those 2 games on Saturday could have potentially been much more meaningful. The losers of those games on Saturday are still almost certainly going to be in the college football playoff, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, but in years past, that certainly wouldn't have been the case. It might have been, they might have been swimming upstream for the rest of the year. I think what Notre Dame did last year is sort of much more impressive, right? Because they lost to a terrible or a relatively poor opponent, and they really had to swim upstream, and they did it. To me, that's a bigger accomplishment than these guys that beat their chests about playing in these tough conferences and lose a couple games and still get into the playoff. I mean, big deal. I think there's.
And I think you had it right when you said terrible. I think that you trust your instincts. I think terrible was the right description there.
Yeah, terrible. So, anyways, but no, I agree. I think it's pretty wide open. I don't think I like to include Notre Dame in the group, but I don't see a team beyond Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and Penn State, Notre Dame. I mean, maybe Oregon. They're kind of under the radar right now. But maybe. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it goes beyond that. I really don't.
Right. Yeah, I would see it the same way. And so maybe the preseason poll, there's always surprises with top teams that don't end up doing so well, but it really feels like those are the 6, 7 teams that, really have a legitimate shot. All right, let's just throw this out there just because. Who's on the bigger hot seat, Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly?
I think it's Brian Kelly. I think Riley's got plenty of ammo coming in. I think they're going to give him some time, but I think Brian Kelly's in some serious must-win situations. I don't think it needs to be Saturday night, but I think he's got to be in the hunt for the SEC, or I think it's going to be it for him.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be. I'd agree that he kind of has to make the playoff at a minimum. But again, he kind of fits in that category with Clemson and Penn State in that he has an experienced quarterback who's pretty damn good, and he by all accounts, it's all going to be about integrating those portal guys that he got with sort of the homegrown talent that he has. I mean, they're an incredibly talented football team, but in some ways, I think putting together that is sort of more challenging. And I would give Dabo a little bit of an advantage on Saturday night just because it's a first game, and his roster are all guys that he's seen in action. He's seen them respond to pressure. He's seen them play. And Kelly isn't quite sure what he has yet when the lights go on, right? I mean, he's seen him in practice, but that's practice, right? So, but I think, I could see a situation where they stumble Saturday night, they get another loss, and then by week 13 or so, they're looking like one of the best football teams in the country, if not the best football team in the country, just because their talent and their quarterback situations are elite, I think.
Okay.
I would probably agree. I think, and part of the issue I think is cultural also. I think Lincoln Riley is more in tune with the team and the fans than Brian Kelly's been. I mean, the whole family thing, and I think Brian Kelly's had more over the. He's had more to work with for a little bit of a longer time than Riley has at Southern Cal. And then with Southern Cal's move to the Big Ten, on it being a huge adjustment last year, I think they're going to give. I think all other things equal, Lincoln Riley would be given a little bit more rope than Brian Kelly would if they both have seasons where they don't know where they want to be.
Well, I sure hope that we've resolved the future of the Notre Dame Southern Cal series. It would be a shame for that wonderful series to end for a guy who's going to get fired, if not this year, next year, right? So let's hope that we get that one figured out. Okay, that's going to do it for today. We'll be back on Thursday with a few specific predictions on the game and how everybody's feeling. And until then, for Mike Brammer, Mike Coffey, and Ed Jordanik, I'm Mike Sullivan. Thanks for listening to Dome and Domer. We'll see you next time.